Welcome, I'm Nina Gryphon, and this is the Astrology and Magic channel. Today we'll talk about the astrology of week 4 of August 2024. First off, I wanted to say thank you to all of my patrons. I appreciate all of your support. If you would like to become a patron and get access to my monthly Magical Elections ebook, which teaches you how and when to make astrological talismans, as well as astrologico-magical content, you can go to patreon.com/Nina Gryphon. August 19th, Venus at 17 Virgo opposes Saturn retrograde in Pisces. An opposition is always a confrontation, a recognition, and a squaring up between two forces. Now, Venus is an inferior planet while Saturn is a superior planet, so all things being equal, Saturn will walk away the winner. Yet Saturn is now on the back foot, and while this is not a completely equalizing factor, it tends to prolong the conflict and the tension rather than Saturn immediately squashing Venus. The image of these two planets is associated with the dance of death. Venus rules dance and fun, and Saturn is death. The medieval imagery of the dance of death is one of the most powerful and enduring images through history. The image is quite simple. It shows living people, usually in the middle of dancing, feasting, and engaging in all kinds of Venusian, life-affirming pursuits, with death in the form of a skeleton participating in the activity as a memento mori. This motif is called the dance macabre. The earliest portrayal of the dance of death known today is in a 16th century manuscript portraying an old cemetery in Paris called the Saint Innocents Cemetery. This manuscript shows paintings of the dance macabre on a wall behind the cemetery's outdoor pulpit. The mural in the cemetery was painted between 1424 and 1425, during a relatively quiet period in the 100 Years' War. There were many subsequent poems and writings not just portraying the dance macabre, but ones giving voice to death and the dancers, often in the form of dialogue. The dialogue usually dramatizes the futile and ephemeral nature of life's pleasures, status, and activities, contrasting them with the omnipresence, certainty, and finality of death. Back to the astrological symbolism of Venus opposition Saturn. On an inner level, this is a time to confront the inevitabilities of the incarnated state, loss, age, and death. But unlike the participants in the dance macabre, who are usually wrapped up in their life's activities, we can take this time to remember and unflinchingly embrace Saturn and all that he represents. We can take this time to step away from worldly and physical enjoyments into solitude, a sort of miniature and temporary death. This may be reflected in the outer world as we see pleasures diminished and overwhelmed by all that is inevitable. August 19th brings us the full moon at 27 Aquarius. This full moon is ruled by Saturn, so we are going to be faced with Saturnian themes of diminishment, age, and loss. Saturn is just past his opposition with Venus, suggesting the loss of pleasure and enjoyment is imminent. We could also see a loss for a high-profile female or Venusian figure in the next 2 weeks. In Washington, D.C., the full moon chart has the Venus-Saturn opposition right on the 4th and 10th house axis, suggesting a very public confrontation between Venus and Saturn, and Venus quite possibly losing as the inferior planet. Saturn squares Jupiter exactly, suggesting a financial downturn or loss, perhaps tied to real estate, as land is one of Saturn's significations. This may be reflected in the financial markets in the latter half of August. The full moon axis itself squares Uranus, which brings sudden events and disruption. Sometimes this has to do with movements of the Earth, like earthquakes or volcanic eruptions, but it can also relate to the human realm, where we might have shocks and sudden upsets. It's also worth mentioning that Mars is still close to its conjunction with Jupiter, though they're separated by about 2 degrees, so a warlike spirit pervades this 2-week period as well. August 19th, the Sun at 27 Leo squares Uranus in Taurus. This aspect, which is baked into the full moon chart, emphasizes possible shocks to and dramatic developments relating to rulership and power, symbolized by the Sun in Leo. Not only is the Sun in Leo, but it is within a few degrees of the royal fixed star Regulus, so the Sun's role as personification of someone in charge, a very solar and martial person, thanks to Regulus's influence, is very strong now. August 19th, Jupiter at 17 Gemini squares Saturn retrograde in Pisces. This is the first of 3 such squares. The next 2 are December 24th, 2024, and the third is June 15th, 2025. Jupiter and Saturn will square 3 times in the next year, and this first time, it's a finely balanced contest, even though Saturn is the superior planet. This is because Saturn is retrograde, yet Saturn is in the overcoming position relative to Jupiter, and Saturn is received by Jupiter, meaning that Jupiter will be the one to accede to Saturn's demands. Because these are both superior planets, we could be looking at quite large and far-reaching societal events. Often this combination foretells an economic slowdown or even a panic in the financial or real estate realms. Saturn represents people who are old, but also those who are powerful because of their age. The conflict between Jupiter and Saturn here is a conflict between the aged and those who have wealth, represented by Jupiter. The square shows the two of them at a standoff, though Saturn still has the upper hand. Saturn, being retrograde, may do something unexpected and therefore maintain his strategic advantage. In the spiritual realm, these two planets are also heavy hitters, and their square can represent the inner tension between growth on the one hand and decay on the other. We want spiritual development as represented by Jupiter, but this will always come at a cost exacted by Saturn. In order to grow personally, we have to let something go and give up something precious. Because Jupiter and Saturn move very slowly, we can think of this less as a single event and more as a longer process, which we can expect to continue through June of 2025, the last time these two planets square each other in this cycle. So if it seems like we have to release something in order to have growth, it's best not to fight the process and instead embrace it. August 2022, August 22nd, the Sun enters Virgo. This is the last month of the summer when the Sun enters a mutable sign, showing the rolling up and putting away of the existing season. The mutable signs have the quality of returning, just like cardinal signs are associated with the start of something. So the cycle of the year is now focused on an approaching ending and a following new start. August 22nd, Venus at 22 Virgo squares Mars in Gemini. Venus and Mars together is a common theme in Renaissance art, such as Botticelli's painting of the sleeping Mars watched over by a waking Venus. This theme represents war, represented by Mars, dormant, while peace, represented by Venus, is ever vigilant. During times of constant conflict and war, this theme was quite popular, showing the gentle triumph of peace over war. In August, Venus and Mars square each other in a relationship of unresolved tension between war and peace. Both planets are in signs of Mercury, suggesting a moment of magical interaction between the physical and the spiritual realms. Even though Mercury is not involved in their aspect, Venus and Mars are meeting in Mercury's realm, which straddles the unknown and the known. We now get the opportunity to change our usual push and pull symbolized by Venus and Mars into a more mystical, fertilizing combination that helps us access the inner energy known as Shakti or Kundalini. Thanks for watching. I'm Nina Gryphon, and this is the Astrology and Magic channel.